Hello everyone, this is Rick, and today we are going to discuss how the fate of our country changed with the conquest of Bengal. In our last video, we have seen the rise of different regional powers after the disintegration of Mughal Empire. Among those powers, the richest power was Bengal. It was rich because of its fertile land and highly profitable trade with the Western nations. So Bengal was eye candy for the Britishers. In this video, we are going to see how it was controlled and conquered with betrayal by the Britishers. So please stay tuned and carry a notebook with you so that you can note down the important points. The last part of this video contains questions and answers which will help you to understand this chapter better. So let's begin. Conquest of Bengal. Before the going into the details about the conquest of Bengal, we must know how East India Company was formed. So establishment year. The English East India Company was formed in 1600 by British merchants. So this was a company formed by the British merchants whose target was to trade in India. Queen Elizabeth I granted them a charter to trade exclusively with the East. So India is on the eastern side of Europe. Therefore, when Queen Elizabeth I granted them permission to trade with the East, India was their primary target. Queen Elizabeth I was the shareholder in the country. So the company had a lot of royal support. The company bought Eastern goods and sold them at high prices in Europe. So the company bought things from India and sold them in Europe at a very high price. The charter allowed them exclusive rights to trade in the East. So the charter granted to them by Queen Elizabeth I allowed them rights to trade in this part of the world. It was initially a trading company formed for commercial gains. So English East India Company was primarily a trading company only for commercial gains. The company grew powerful and later played a political role in India. So slowly the company grew very powerful and it played a great political role in India. The foundation of the company marked the beginning of British colonial expansion. So it was through this company that the British colonies expanded in Asia. Establishment of factories. So what did they do first when they came to India? The company established its first factory in Surat in 1612. So first factory was in Surat in 1612. It included a warehouse, office of for record keeping and residential quarters. So there was a warehouse for storage and manufacturing of goods. Office was there for keeping accounts, and also there was residential quarter. Sir Thomas Roe's role. In 1615, Sir Thomas Roe visited Jahangir's court to seek trade rights. So when Mughal Emperor Jahangir was on the throne, that time a person named Sir Thomas Roe visited Jahangir and asked for his permission to trade in India, and it was granted. The emperor granted several concessions to the company. So emperor gave a lot of facilities to the company. By 1623, factories were set up in Ahmedabad, Bharuch, Agra and Masulipatam. So these were the four places where factories were set up by 1623. By 1647, the company had established 23 factories in India. So by 1647, there were 23 factories of East India Company, English East India Companies in India. Each factory was headed by a factor or merchant governor. So each factory had a head, and that head was called a factor who was a merchant governor. who had both political and commercial roles. Nothing was manufactured in factories, they were purely for trade. So these factories were not manufacturing units, they were solely based in India for trading purposes. Fort St. George in Madras and trading town at Bombay. So Fort St. George in 1639 the company received land in Madras and built Fort St. George. So in 1639 in Madras, which is presently known as Chennai, Fort St. George was built by the English East India Company. Fort St. George was a fortified trading post for British trade in South India. So this was a fortified trading post, and its main intention was to conduct trading activities with the southern part of Indian subcontinent. King Charles II got Bombay as dowry when he married a Portuguese princess. So King Charles II married a Portuguese princess, and since the Portuguese owned Bombay at that point of time, thus in the marriage, King Charles II got the land of Bombay as a gift from the Portuguese in his marriage. That gift was a form of dowry. In 1688, he rented Bombay to the East India Company at £10 per year. So in 1688, he gave away the land for rent to English East India Company, and the rate of rent was £10 per year. The company developed Bombay into a key trading settlement. So the company converted Bombay into a key settlement, and still today Bombay is one of the primary centers for commercial activities. Bombay became the most important British settlement on the west coast. So Bombay became the most important western settlement. The company took control of Madras after acquiring it from local rulers. So the company acquired Madras from the local rulers and also turned it into a key settlement. The company fortified these locations to secure their trade interests. So all these locations were fortified properly in order to secure their interest in trade. Fort William. Fort William was in Bengal. So it was established in 1690 when and it was set up as a fortified settlement in Calcutta. Therefore, it was called Fort William. This fort was named Fort William after the British king. So it was named as Fort William because of the British king William. Calcutta became the eastern headquarters of the company. So in the east, the headquarter of East India Company was Calcutta. Calcutta, Madras and Bombay became known as presidencies. So these were huge areas where Britishers had exclusive control through the East India Company. So these three places became to be known as presidencies. Each presidency was placed under the charge of a governor. That was the administrative setup. So a governor controlled all the administration in a presidency. These presidencies served as major trading centers for the company. So all these presidencies were important as trading centers for the company. Forts helped in gaining political and military control. So these forts were essential for political and military control. Fort William played a key role in British presence in Bengal. So the British presence in Bengal was infrastructurally supported by Fort William up to a great extent. Important privileges from the Mughals. So, what were the important concessions that the English East India Company got from the Mughal emperors? So, Farman from Aurangzeb. In 1691, Aurangzeb granted a Farman exempt the British from paying customs in Bengal. So, the Britishers did not have to pay customs tax in Bengal according to the Farman granted by Aurangzeb in 1691, which was a huge economic concession for the East India Company, considering that Bengal was a trading center and the richest part of India at that point of time. In 1717, Farrukhshire granted another firman for trade rights in Gujarat and Deccan. So similar trading rights were given also in Gujarat and Deccan by Emperor Farrukhshire in 1717. The company was allowed to issue dastaks for free movement of goods. So dastaks were basically permissions which allowed the company, they were trading licenses which exempted the company members from taxes. So company was allowed to issue dastaks, means suppose you have a dastak from the East India Company, then you don't need to pay any kind of tax in order to move your goods from one place to another. So company gave dastaks to their trading partners in India. British officials misused dastaks for private trade without paying taxes. So this dastak was for the company use only. However, whenever the company used to move some goods from one place to another, along with the company goods, the British officials also moved their private goods using the dastak which was supposed to be used by the company only. Therefore, there was a misuse of dastak, which the British officials used for private trade. The company started interfering in local politics or for gains. So companies started interfering in local politics. They started interfering in the functionalities of kings and queens. They supported rival Indian rulers to expand their influence. So they sometimes supported some rulers and sometimes were against some rulers. These privileges brought huge commercial and monetary benefits to the company. So because of all these reasons, they could acquire huge amount of profits. These firmans marked the beginning of British exploitation of Mughal concessions. So because of all these firmans, the Britishers could expand their business in India. French East India Company and Anglo-French rivalry. So East India Company was not only one. There were many East India companies. The Britishers had East India Company, the French had East India Company. So there were many East India companies. Now we will see about the French East India Company and how they were opposed to the British East India Company. So French Company formation. The French East India Company was formed in 1664 CE. So this company was formed in 1664, about half a century later than the Britishers. Their first factory was at Pondicherry, which is now called as Puducherry. So their first factory, the first factory of French East India Company, was established at Puducherry. They established settlements at Mahe, Masulipatnam, Surat and Chandernagar, which is presently known as Chandannagar. So these were the famous areas where the French people had their governance. By then, the British had strong presence in many parts of India. So by the time French came in India, they were seeing that Britishers had already set up well established trading system in India. By 18th century, Portuguese, Dutch and Spaniards lost trading power. So by the 18th century, only the Britishers and the French were present in India. Portuguese, Dutch and Spaniards had lost all their powers in the commercial field. British and French tried to dominate Indian trade with Europe. So the Britishers and the French were the sole traders in India. Political and trade rivalry led to wars called Carnatic Wars. So here The Britishers and the French East India Company fought wars against each other, which are popularly called as the Carnatic Wars. These wars involved local rulers and changed power dynamics in India. So these wars were sometimes supported by the local rulers of India. Some local rulers supported the Britishers, while some local rulers supported the French, and so there was a change in the power dynamics in India. Rise of British power in Bengal. Now we will see how Bengal slowly came under the British rule. So, rise of British power in Bengal. Bengal's wealth. Bengal was the paradise of the earth for its fertility and riches. So, in Bengal, even if you see today, you will find a lot of rivers and water sources. It is the place where the largest river system in the world, that is the Gangetic River system, is meeting with Bay of Bengal, which is an ocean. So this is a place where alluvium gets deposited. Hence, it is very fertile. That is why the Britishers referred to it as the paradise on earth, not because of its beauty, but because of its production capability, for its fertility and the money it would bring. British, French, and Dutch competed for trade rights in Bengal. So, all these foreign powers, namely the British, French, and Dutch, they competed for trading rights in Bengal. British set up a prosperous trading settlement in Calcutta. So, they set up a very good trading infrastructure in Calcutta with the help of construction of Fort William. In 1717, Farooq Share allowed British duty-free trade in Bengal, so they did not have to pay any tax in Bengal for trading purposes, and that was the permission granted by Mughal Emperor Farooq Share in 1717. The company was allowed to issue dastaks for free goods movement. So to move their own goods, they could issue dastak, which is a permission that required no tax to be paid. British officials used these dastaks for personal trade. Dastaks were the permission granted only for company trade, but Britishers also did personal trade side by side, and those dastaks were used for personal trade in order to avoid taxes. Tax evasion and corruption angered Bengal's rulers. So, thus, they didn't have to pay tax even for their personal trade, and that was unacceptable to the rulers of Bengal. These developments triggered tension between Siraj-ud-Daulah and the company. Battle of Plassey causes. So, what was the Battle of Plassey and how did the battle happen? Why? What were the reasons behind this battle? Animosity with Nawab. In 1756, Siraj-ud-Daulah succeeded Ali Vardi Khan and opposed British power. So, in 1756, Siraj-ud-Daulah succeeded the last powerful Nawab of Bengal, that is Alibardi Khan. And from the time of Alibardi Khan only, Britishers were not at all favored by the rulers of Bengal. So Siraj-ud-Daulah continued that tradition. He wanted to control British corruption and enforce tax payment. So what Siraj-ud-Daulah focused upon was that Britishers are permitted free trade only for company needs. Personal trade was under tax. So they Siraj-ud-Daulah wanted to control the British corruption and enforce tax payment on personal business. So the British refused to pay tax, which angered the Nawab. The Britishers said that we will not pay any tax, and that is how the Nawab was very much angry. The British fortified Calcutta without Nawab's permission. So, without Nawab's permission, the Britishers made the fort in Calcutta. They made necessary defense arrangements, and the clarification from the side of Nawab was that if you are a trader, then why do you need so many defense infrastructures? Because in order to make your trading secure, you will have to ask me. I will provide you. I will take the responsibility for your trading security. Why do you need to fortify Calcutta? And that was not at all liked by Nawab. So Siraj saw fortification as a threat to his authority. The Nawab of Bengal did not like this idea of Britishers fortifying Calcutta. So Nawab ordered British and French to remove fortifications. Nawab said he directly ordered the British and the French companies to remove all kinds of fortifications. French agreed, but British refused to obey. The French people removed fortification, but Britishers did not obey. This led to conflict between the Nawab and the company. So thus Nawab and the company was at their end of negotiations and they were going to military solutions. Battle of Plassey. So what happened in the Battle of Plassey? Siege of Calcutta. Siraj captured Fort William in June 1756 with a large army. So Siraj-ud-Daulah went forward and captured the fort of Calcutta in 1756. Robert Clive recaptured Calcutta by January 1757. So by January 1757, again Robert Clive recaptured Calcutta from Siraj-ud-Daulah, the young Nawab of Bengal. Treaty was signed between Nawab and Clive restoring company rights. So this was the Treaty of Alinagar, where a temporary peace pact was done by the Nawab and Clive. Mir Jafar, commander of Nawab's army, was promised to be made Nawab. So Britishers promised Mir Jafar, who was the commander or the commander in chief of Nawab's army, that once the Nawab is gone, we will make you the Nawab of Bengal. So Robert Clive and Mir Jafar signed a secret treaty on 5th June 1757. So Robert Clive and Mir Jafar did a background deal, a backside deal, and that was done on 5th June 1757. British made excessive demands to provoke war. So then the Britishers were ready to fight the war because the commander in chief of the Nawab's army was on their side, which no one knew. So now the Britishers were opting for war. Fought on 23rd June 1757 between Nawab and the British. So on 23rd June 1757 both the armies of Nawab and Robert Clive came face to face. Mir Jafar did not fight. Siraj fled, was captured and put to death. So Mir Jafar totally betrayed the Nawab and Nawab was very much confident of his win, so he totally trusted Mir Jafar. However, Mir Jafar did not even participate in the fight. So Siraj-ud-Daulah had to flee. However, in the way he was captured and put to death. Mir Jafar was made Nawab. British gained power in Bengal. So what was the outcome of the battle? Mir Jafar became the Nawab of Bengal and Britishers gained complete power in the territory of Bengal. Consequences and importance of Battle of Plassey. So how was this battle important? So Mir Jafar became Nawab, acting as a puppet of the British. So this whole province of Bengal totally came under the British, where Mir Jafar was just a puppet Nawab and did whatever the Britishers told him to do. British got free trade rights in Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. So Britishers got total trading rights in Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. So absolute trading monopoly they were having in these three rich areas of India. He received a huge cash gift from Mir Jafar. So Mir Jafar paid a huge amount of bribe to the Britishers in order to make him Nawab, and thus it was paid from the Nawab's treasury. British army and navy officers received large sums of money from Mir Jafar for making him the Nawab of Bengal. The British got zamindari rights of 24 parganas. So they got zamindari rights of the 24 parganas, which was a huge fertile area in current day West Bengal state in India. So British got zamindari rights. Zamindari rights means total control, even the right to collect tax. Company transformed from a trader to political ruler. So company transformed from a trader to a political ruler. Bengal's wealth was drained, making India poorer. So, through the payment of salaries to the company officers and different other kinds of corruption, Bengal's wealth was totally draining out into Britain, and thus India was becoming poorer day by day. Bengal's resources were used in the Third Carnatic War. So, in the Third Carnatic War, which was fought between the British East India Company and French East India Company, the Britishers used the money that they got from Bengal. In 1760, Mir Jafar was replaced by Mir Qasim, who gave Jagirs of Bardhaman, Midnapur, and Chittagong. So Mir Jafar was replaced by his son-in-law Mir Qasim, who went a step further and gave lands to the Britishers, gave portion of lands to the Britishers, and also tax collection rights in those lands. Now we will see what happened in the Battle of Buxar. What were the main reasons behind the Battle of Buxar? So conflict with Mir Qasim. Mir Qasim, a capable ruler, tried to free himself from the British control and improve the state's finances. So after being the ruler, Mir Qasim understood that Britishers are trying to drain out all the wealth from Bengal, and that was disastrous for the people of India as a whole. So, being a capable ruler, he decided that he will not stay anymore as a puppet ruler. He raised a disciplined and well equipped army trained by the Europeans. So he raised a very well equipped army and he called European trainers to train his army. His reforms made British hostile, leading to open conflict. Thus, Britishers were not at all liking the way he was conducting his business. British officials misused trading rights by selling dastaks to Indian merchants for duty-free trade. So British officials had many Indian merchant alliances. So many Indian merchant friends were there for the Britishers. They were giving this free trading rights to the Indian merchants also. So anyone who is a friend of English East India Company could trade in Bengal for free according to the dastaks which were issued by the Britishers. Now Mir Qasim did not like this at all. So this duty free trade caused heavy revenue loss to the Nawab. So the Nawab's resources depended on the revenue from trade, and since almost all of the trade was becoming duty free, the Nawab was having great revenue loss from all these activities. To ensure fair trade, Mir Qasim abolished all duties, angering the British. So Mir Qasim realized that I cannot ask the Britishers to pay tax. Hence, I will remove the tax taking policy from every kind of trading partners. So everyone was free from paying tax. It was a huge loss for Mir Qasim, but in a way he proved that he was very efficient because he gave competition to the British. Now everyone and the Britishers were equal. So he wanted Indian traders to trade on the same terms as the British. Now Indian traders are also getting the same advantage as the Britishers, and that was obviously not at all liked by the English East India Company. So in 1763, war broke out between Mir Qasim and the British. Battle of Buxar. Now we will go into details about the Battle of Buxar. Mir Qasim escaped to Awadh and formed an alliance with Nawab Siraj-ud-Daulah and Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II. So these were the three people who fought together in the Battle of Buxar. Who were those three people? Mir Qasim, Nawab Siraj-ud-Daulah of Awadh, and Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II. The Battle of Buxar was fought on 22nd October 1764. So on 1764, the Battle of Buxar was fought. On one side, we had the alliance of Mir Qasim, Nawab Siraj-ud-Daulah and Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II. On the other side, we had the English East India Company. The combined Indian forces faced the British army. So all together the Indian forces faced the British army. The British force was led by Commander Hector Munro, who was very efficient English military strategician. The British defeated the combined forces of Mir Qasim, Siraj-ud-Daulah and Shah Alam II. So the Britishers somehow managed to defeat the combined forces. After the defeat, British removed Mir Qasim and reinstated Mir Jafar as the Nawab. So Britishers removed Mir Qasim obviously because he lost and he was in one of the primary enemy of the Britishers at that point of time. Hence he was removed and Mir Jafar was reinstated as the Nawab of Bengal. The victory at Buxar confirmed British military supremacy in India. So this battle proved that Britishers were militarily on a very higher level than the Indian forces. Consequences of the Battle of Buxar. What was the result and impact of this battle? British dominance. The British emerged as the dominant power in India with control over Bengal. So Britishers became the dominant power in India. The French, Portuguese, Spaniards, Dutch all lost every kind of importance. Only important power in India was the Britishers. The battle gave the British political influence over Awadh and the Mughal Empire because both Awadh and Mughal Empire also lost to the Britishers. Hence, Britishers took over a large amount of political control in the provinces of Awadh and also in Mughal Empire in general. Treaty of Allahabad was signed between Robert Clive, Siraj-ud-Daulah and Shah Alam II. This is very significant because it took away virtually all the powers from Siraj-ud-Daulah and Shah Alam. Awadh was returned to Siraj-ud-Daulah but Kora and Allahabad were taken away. So Awadh was returned to Siraj-ud-Daulah but two important parts of Awadh, Kora and Allahabad was taken away by the Britishers. So Siraj-ud-Daulah lost two key features of his state. Nawab of Awadh paid 50 lakh to the company. So Nawab of Awadh had to compensate the war losses of the company by paying them 50 lakh, which was a huge amount of money in those days. The British extended the British agreed to defend Awadh. Its army was to be stationed at British expense. So Britishers told that we will defend Awadh against all kind of foreign attacks, but our army will stay in Awadh. This was an indirect control over the military context of Awadh. The British got Diwani rights to collect revenue from Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. So before this, Britishers had got fragmented zamindari rights, but now they got Diwani rights, means right to collect revenue from these provinces. So they were no more traders, they became political conquerors, and that can be witnessed from the fact that Britishers started collecting taxes from the places like Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. Nawabs continued nominal rule without military or real power. So Nawabs continued to be the puppet rulers, but actually they had no power at all. Robert Clive returned to India as governor of Bengal in 1765. In 1765, Robert Clive again became the governor of Bengal. Dual government. Now, what was the meaning of dual government? And it was introduced by Robert Clive in Bengal in 1765 CE. Bengal came under two authorities, the Nawab and the British Company. So, Bengal had two masters. The people of Bengal were being ruled by two authorities, that is, the Nawab and the British Company. The Nawab handled general administration and criminal justice. So power was divided, where the Nawab handled the burden, that is, general administration and dispensing justice to the criminals. The company enjoyed military power and controlled revenue, whereas the company enjoyed the show of power, that is military power, and also they controlled the money. So the hard work was to be done by the Nawab, whereas company enjoyed the fruits of Nawab's hard work. The company used Bengal's revenue but was not responsible for its welfare. So the company could collect revenue from Bengal and use it for their own monetary benefits, but the company had no responsibility to the welfare of the people of Bengal. The Nawab had responsibility but no real power. And who was to see that the people of Bengal were getting welfare schemes? It was the duty of Nawab. Now, how will the Nawab do all those welfare activities without any money? That was not the problem of the Britishers. The arrangement gave the British control over finances without accountability. So, this arrangement gave the Britishers rights over the monetary condition, but they were answerable to none. The system led to a corrupt and inefficient government. The dual government laid the groundwork for full British rule. So this was how the Britishers were slowly proving to be masters of India in every departments possible. Consequences and end of dual government. No accountability. The company officers collected revenue but took no responsibility for the people. So they only took money from Bengal, but they were not at all concerned with the welfare of the Bengalis. The Nawab was held responsible for welfare but lacked power. Now, who was to do welfare of the people? It was the duty of Nawab according to the system of dual government. But Nawab had no power or money to do any kind of welfare. A severe famine killed one third of the population, exposing the system failure. So in 1770, there was a famine, and one third of the people of Bengal died in that famine, and that exposed the failure in the dual government system. The dual government collapsed due to lack of care and efficiency. Indian officials under company controlled the oppressed people. So oppressed people were being further controlled by the Indian officials only. Indians were becoming enemies for the Indian common people. The dual government ended in 1772 by the court of directors of the company. So in 1772, the court of directors of the company decided to end the dual government. Warren Hastings was appointed governor of Bengal. So Warren Hastings became the governor of Bengal. Bengal came under direct company rule. Nawab was pensioned off. So through the end of dual government, the Nawab had no responsibility at all. He got certain amount of pension, and Bengal came under direct company rule. So with the end of dual government, all the aspects of Bengal came directly under the company. The treasury was shifted from Murshidabad to Calcutta, which was now the capital of Bengal. So the treasury was taken away from Murshidabad. Thus, the Nawab virtually lost all his power with the end of dual government, and Bengalis came directly under the rule of company. So now we will see the questions and answers which will help you in your exams. When was the English East India Company formed? The English East India Company was formed in 1600 by a small group of British merchants. Name a few British settlements in India in the 17th century. In 1623, factories of the British East India Company came up in places like Surat, Broch, Ahmedabad, Agra, and Masulipatnam. Later, fortified settlements were established in Madras, Fort St. George, Bombay, and Calcutta, Fort William. Why did European traders compete with each other to gain trading rights in Bengal? In the 18th century, the province of Bengal was known as the paradise of the earth, as it was the richest and most fertile province in India. Traders from countries like Britain, France, and Holland competed with each other to gain trading rights in the province. What privileges did the English East India Company acquire from the Mughal Emperor Farrukh Shah? In 1717, Mughal Emperor Farrukh Shah issued a royal farman granting the British East India Company the right to trade in Bengal without paying taxes to the government. The company also got the right to issue passes or dastaks for free movement of goods. Why was Siraj-ud-Daulah against the British? Siraj-ud-Daulah was against the British because he wanted to curb their growing power. He tried to control the corrupt British officials and asked them to pay taxes. The British refused, which greatly angered the Nawab. Why did Siraj-ud-Daulah attack Calcutta in 1756? In anticipation of another round of Anglo-French conflict, the British started fortifying their settlement in Calcutta without the Nawab's permission. Siraj viewed this as a challenge to his sovereignty and ordered both the British and French to dismantle their fortifications. When the British refused, Siraj-ud-Daulah marched towards Calcutta with a huge army and captured Fort William in June 1756 CE. What means did the British use to ensure the defeat of Siraj-ud-Daulah? The British signed a secret treaty with Mir Jafar, the commander-in-chief of Siraj-ud-Daulah's army, on 5th June 1757. He was promised the throne of Bengal and many trading privileges. Mir Jafar did not participate in the battle and remained a mere onlooker. This betrayal ensured Siraj-ud-Daulah's defeat. Discuss the consequences of the Battle of Plassey. Mir Jafar was made the Nawab of Bengal. He was a puppet in the hands of the British. The English East India Company was granted the undisputed rights to trade freely in Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa, now Odisha. Robert Clive got a cash gift of a huge sum by Mir Jafar. A large sum of money was paid to the British Army and Navy officers. The British were given the zamindari rights of 24 parganas. The battle transformed the East India Company from a trading organization to a political power. The company used the resources of Bengal to fund its third war of Carnatic against the French. The Battle of Plassey was a turning point in the history of India. Justify this statement. The Battle of Plassey is regarded as one of the most significant events in the history of India. It paved the way for British control over Bengal and eventually over the rest of India. It made the British greedy for Bengal's wealth, which led to its plunder. The company and its officials openly and shamelessly exploited Bengal. It started the economic exploitation of the Indians and made India a poorer country. The battle transformed the English East India Company from a trading organization to a political power. What steps did Mir Qasim take to strengthen his position? Mir Qasim attempted to improve the finances of the state. He raised a modern, disciplined, and well equipped army trained by Europeans. He was determined to free himself from foreign control. These actions made the British increasingly hostile, resulting in conflict. Why did Mir Qasim abolish all duties on internal trade? The British officials misused trading rights and sold dastaks to Indian merchants, who then carried out duty free trade. This caused huge revenue loss to the Nawab. To protect local traders, Mir Qasim abolished all duties so Indian traders could trade on the same terms as the British. This greatly angered the British. Name the two parties with whom Mir Qasim formed an alliance against the British. Mir Qasim formed an alliance with Siraj-ud-Daulah, the Nawab of Awadh, Shah Alam II, the Mughal emperor, who led the British forces in the Battle of Buxar. The British force in the Battle of Buxar was led by Commander Hector Munro. What were the consequences of the Battle of Buxar? The British emerged as a dominant force in India. British control over Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa was legalized. Shah Alam II gave Diwani rights to the British. The Nawab of Awadh became dependent on the British. The puppet Nawabs continued to rule without any military power. British influence extended over the Mughal Empire. The Treaty of Allahabad followed in 1765, strengthening the British power. Between whom was the Treaty of Allahabad signed? What were the provisions of the treaty? The Treaty of Allahabad 1765 was signed between Robert Clive, Siraj-ud-Daulah and Shah Alam II. Provisions: British returned Awadh to Siraj-ud-Daulah. Kora and Allahabad were taken from the Nawab. Nawab had to pay 50 lakh to the company as war indemnity. British agreed to defend the Nawab's territory. British got Diwani rights over Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. Shah Alam II was given 20 lakh pension, 26 lakh pension, and the districts of Kora and Allahabad. What do you understand by the term dual government? When and by whom was it introduced? The dual government was introduced by Robert Clive in Bengal in 1765 CE. Under this system, Bengal had two masters, the Nawab and the Company. Nawab had the responsibility of administration, law, and order, while the Company held military powers and revenue collection rights. Thus, the Company enjoyed power and finances without responsibility. What were the drawbacks of the dual government? Who abolished it? The company enjoyed power without any responsibilities. The Nawab was burdened with administration but had no real power. Officials collected revenue without caring for the welfare of the people. A terrible famine killed one-third of the population. It led to collapse of governance. The system was corrupt and exploitative. The dual government was abolished in 1772 by the Court of Directors of the company. Warren Hastings was appointed as the governor of Bengal and took direct control. So that was all about how Bengal was conquered with treachery by the British English East India Company. We have seen how the Bengal rose to power and how In the Battle of Plassey, Mir Jafar betrayed the Nawab of Bengal and Siraj-ud-Daulah was killed by the Britishers. Next, we have seen how in Battle of Buxar, the Indian forces along with Mir Qasim, Siraj-ud-Daulah and Shah Alam II fought against the Britishers but lost. Then we have seen how Britishers drained away the resources from Bengal with the help of dual government. So that was all for today. Hope you have liked the video. Please support me so that I can bring brighter contents in future. Thank you so much for your love and support.